But tonight, I'm going to be talking about WordPress performance advice with a slight twist. It's not a long talk tonight. You'll be glad about that. As with most WordPress sitting sessions, our online ones, it's very much chat first. There's no pressure to turn on your cameras. There's no pressure to jump on the microphone. No expectations that you need to have the right answers. This isn't a hot take session. It's about sharing. It's a thinking space, being able to share ideas, maybe a chance to reflect on how WordPress actually feels to work with you right now, especially if you're building and running real world sites. So feel free to drop thoughts into the chat as we go. Short reactions are perfect. Disagreements are fine too. We're not trying to win arguments here, just to have a meaningful thinking space. So, all right, let's get into the meat of tonight. So let me give you a scenario. Client comes to you and they say, this site feels slow. It's happened to all of us, I'm absolutely sure. Now, most people, and I'm saying most freelancers, probably jump straight into tools. So the browser dev tools, JavaScript's console, network performance, maybe Lighthouse or GTmetrix to run some reports. And that's fair. So in the chat, send me a number 1 or a thumbs up if that's your first instinct or strategy. If a client comes back and says, the site's feeling slow, what's your first take? As I say, most developers, most freelancers jump straight into the tools. Yep, getting some ones there. That used to be me as well. Guilty as charged. Guilty, absolutely. Yep, dev tools, absolutely. It's instinctual. Yeah, it's I want to see what's going on. It's slow. It must be a technical problem somewhere. So Steve doesn't do it anymore. Yep, good. Okay, so let's think about how a doctor works. If you walk into a doctor's office and say, I feel a bit off, they don't immediately run every bank of tests and start optimizing random parts of your body. They triage. They ask, where does it hurt? When did it start? What else is happening? And what have you tried to remedy the problem? They triage the problem first. Because fixing the wrong thing is usually worse than not fixing anything at all. And that's exactly how I approach WordPress performance now. I run a quick triage. And here it is. So the performance triage. Where's the pain? What systems are involved? Is it structural or is it surface level? And do you need to fix it now, defer it, or leave it alone? So that's the way that I approach these problems at the moment, the performance problems. I don't jump straight into DevTools. I don't run GTmetrix. I ask these questions first. So for this example, the site feels slow. Where's the pain? So the client might tell me, oh, it's the admin UI is slow generally, particularly form entries. Maybe the contact page is feeling a bit slow as well when people are submitting stuff. Clearly, that's not a user-facing issue yet, maybe. Mostly sounds internal. You ask them what systems. So they say, oh, it's a bit mixed, a bit of the admin, a bit of your front-end contact form. So this already tells me, without even opening any dev tools, it already tells me it probably isn't a page problem. It's likely more a deeper systems problem. So the key takeaway here is don't start with tools straight away. Take a step back and start with some triage, just with like a real doctor. Just ask the client questions. What's the problem? What's the pain? What systems are involved? Is it in the admin? Is it in the UI? Really kind of tease out the questions, the answers to those questions for triage before you jump straight into the tools. So most people do skip that step. It is instinctual. It's how we've kind of been trained, how we kind of are expected to work, is immediately go straight to page audits, page analysis, asset optimization, general on-page tweaks. That kind of, it's things that are under our control, things that we can fix with our hands. First, feel like the most instinctual thing to jump into. But here's where the triage misses. So let's say you inspect the page and find there's a couple of large scripts. Maybe there's multiple external requests. Maybe there's some inefficient loading. You can optimize that. But the real issue behind it is multiple systems overlapping, maybe duplicate logic, maybe some complex interactions happening there. So what you're really doing is you're just kind of polishing the surface rather than understanding the underlying issue. It's kind of jumping the gun into doing dev work and optimization work before really understanding what's really going on. So this is a pattern that I saw in my client work over years. And you've probably seen this before when you come across client sites, particularly new client sites. You'll find there's one or more page builders. You'll find that there's probably mixed content, some blocks, some page builder stuff. Maybe there'll be plugin widgets or shortcodes kind of layered into that content, and maybe some old theme PHP templates kind of still hanging around like a bad smell. You can optimize a page and it might get slightly better, but you still get that kind of feeling that something feels a bit off. It's very surface level. So the key takeaway really is if the system, the underlying system is messy, surface optimizations won't feel like a fix at all. They might polish it and make it a little bit faster, but they're not going to address the underlying issue. And this is a lot to do when people are doing WordPress performance audits. They're really looking at the surface level, like the page stuff, and not really going deep down into where the issue is. So let's go a little bit deeper into that same site that we use as an example. You trace what happens. So you say, okay, right, the contact form is a bit sluggish. You trace what happens when a user submits a form, for example. And you look at the underlying system. What's it actually doing? Okay, we've got front-end validation. We've got plugin handling, submission. We've got the entries being created. Data is sent externally to some CRM. Some automation is triggered. Maybe they've got Uncanny Automator that's doing some things. A confirmation is rendered on screen, and a debug log is updated. You find a debug log this way. So now the delay isn't so mysterious. It's a system. The system is doing work, but lots of work, and maybe some work that could be optimized and it shouldn't be doing, like the debug log, for example. Now, none of that is going to appear if you do a GTmetrix report or a web dev tools. Have a look at the page from that point of view. It's all underneath. It's all system level. It's not the surface level. So here's the pattern. You've got a common stack. This is kind of common on most client websites that you'll probably be doing performance audits. You'll have a form plugin. You'll have a CRM integration, some sort of automation tool, some sort of email trigger or other triggers, and maybe some logging or tracking, whether that's debug or just kind of, generally it does that sort of stuff anyway. Now, each of those steps that we've looked into in the system is reasonable, but together they might create latency, or at least appeared as latency to the user who's submitting the form. So performance often lives in the underlying system interactions and not the actual pages themselves. So there might be nothing wrong in this context with the contact page, but when we look a little bit deeper, we are seeing that the system itself and how it is working through those steps could be optimized, but not the actual page itself. So now we go back to triage, same site. We ask again, where's the pain? So let's say the admin is slow. Now that's kind of annoying. And then we see that the form submission is slow. Now that is user facing, and that could possibly be a financial cost if that's a call to action, or if it's, say, a product checkout form. But now you have a decision. You don't fix everything, you prioritize, just like a doctor would do. So this is the difference between a headache and internal bleeding. Both are problems, but only one really changes what you do next. So a concrete contrast, slow dashboard You can tolerate that. But a slow conversion step, that needs to be fixed because that affects the client's bottom line. Absolutely. So same issue, but a different priority. And this is where this triage step comes in really, really useful because it allows you to step back, have a look at the overall performance, see exactly what's happening, and you'll be able to prioritize what to fix rather than jump into a page and start doing analysis on a particular page straight away. So performance work for me is mostly prioritization and not optimization. It's going back to the client to say, okay, I understand what's happening. This part is slow, okay, but this part is potentially losing you money. I suggest we fix that part first. Even though the admin lag might be very annoying, they can tolerate that, but they will not tolerate loss of money, obviously. So again, performance triage, I think, is my take. I think it goes against a lot of the performance advice that people will give for WordPress. They talk about image optimization and on-page optimization and all this sort of stuff. I'm saying go a little bit above initially and triage, and then look a little bit more subsurface as to what is the system doing in that particular those problems. So let's talk about metrics and where they help and where they kind of mislead a little bit. And this is the real point of this talk tonight. So you might run a test and get a score. So for example, our contact page in this example was slow and sluggish. So you might run GTmetrix or browser dev tools, run a test on that page and get a particular score. Let's say the score is mediocre and you improve it. That's great. But you ask yourself, did the form get faster? Did the experience improve? Sometimes yes, but often no. And the pattern here is scores improve, which is great. That's also the point of optimization. But in the admin, it's still painful and key workflows remain unchanged. You've not addressed the underlying way that the system works. With doing the automations and debug logging, that's invisible to you at this particular level because those metrics measure something else. It kind of reminds me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the ultimate answer to life, the universe, and everything, in the Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book, where a race of beings they build a computer called Deep Thought to answer the question, and after millions of years, it spits out the number 42. Now, it's not a very helpful metric, and I'm sure they could run the program again and maybe get 41 or 40. But in the end, they had to build a bigger computer to figure out the triage questions that led to the answer. So that's kind of the point of this talk, is that the triage part, I think, is the most important part of WordPress performance and a big part that most freelancers miss out. They jump straight into the metrics and then work off the metrics alone. And that doesn't really show the underlying problems in most cases, I think. So metrics will tell you something happened, but not whether it mattered or not. So you might get moving from an B to an A or a C to a B, which is great in number terms, but tells you absolutely nothing about the actual problem itself. Now, let's just say you try and fix everything. So you optimize assets, you optimize loading behavior, you're into the scripts, you're deferring stuff into the footer, you're looking at all the interactions between all the different things. And sometimes it works. But now, because you've decided to fix everything and you're deep in the code, now the system has the potential to become more complex. It could become harder to update and harder to debug. I'm sure we've all been there where we've been in a plugin and we've added extra stuff, or we've added a plugin to try and fix an issue on the WordPress website. And it gets to a point where you've kind of traded one problem for another larger one. Up to the point where you open up the site and think, I don't really want to touch this. And I know a lot of people have been there. I've been there. I've certainly opened up a lot of client sites, and after tinkering around going, you know what, maybe just best not to touch that anymore. It's too far gone. So that's a performance issue too. When you get to a point where a freelancer doesn't want to even touch a website, you know there's something bad going on there. And that's a performance issue. So sometimes the right answer when you are doing triage isn't necessarily intervention straight away. It's water, rest, and leaving it alone. Just like the doctor would say, not really leaving it alone, but sometimes the right move is to monitor for a while and not intervene straight away. So if you can see an issue, again, a lot of people will jump into tools straight away, but sometimes it's more useful just to back off and just track that behavior for a while, do your triage and see exactly what's going on under the hood and at the surface level to get a real good overview as to what the problem is rather than addressing just those metric speeds. So key takeaway is every optimization that you're doing, whether it's intentional or not, you're kind of adding weight somewhere else. So if you're adding a plugin, that's adding complexity. If you're editing code, then you're undermining stability, possibly. So just be very, very careful if you are doing some optimization analysis in a WordPress website and you come up with all these issues and you want to fix everything. That's a red flag for me. You need to prioritize, see which ones are the biggest ones, the most beneficial for the client, and which ones can you just kind of leave at the moment and monitor to see how they go on. So what does good performance actually look like? So good performance is not perfect scores. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I do a lot of stuff on Reddit, and people are always posting in those forums what's the perfect score, or I got an A minus or a B plus. How can I move it up to an A? You're not chasing perfect scores. It might be a nice thing to put in a report to a client, but does it really matter? Does it really move the ball? Does it really fix the underlying performance issues of the site? So good performance, it's fixing what matters, and you can only do that once you've understood the problem by doing triage. It's leaving what doesn't matter just now, and it's keeping the system understandable and maintainable and coherent as well. So you're not rocking the boat too much by changing lots of things all at once. So example, you fix the form delay and you might leave the admin lag for a while just to see what else underneath that system is really causing that, rather than jump in and optimize the 2 or the 3 or the 5 or the 10 things that you've found all at once. You've always got to remember that WordPress is a huge working system. And if you're poking it at many points, it usually groans quite a bit and you can end up doing more harm than good. And that kind of circles back to my analogy of the doctor. If you go in saying, I feel a bit off, doctor, and they start sticking needles in you and doing tests and then sawing your leg off, that's not very helpful. We need to step back and just ask a few questions first. So that's my talk tonight. Key takeaway really is good performance is selective and not exhaustive. And it's not surface level, it's usually deeper systems. And we can only really do that properly if we're doing some sort of level of triage before jumping straight into tools and analysis. I've got a few questions that if you want to have a discussion, if you want to hang around, you can answer them in the chat or on camera, whatever you're comfortable with. Like, where do you performance problems actually start in your projects? Where do you see them? What's something you deliberately chosen not to optimize, or do you jump in and optimize it all? Have you ever improved performance and made the site worse, as in worse to maintain, worse for stability, worse for next time you don't want to poke around the bear anymore? So happy if you want to chat online, or if you want to.
Oh, I was gonna write it in the chat chat window, but one of my very first in-person meetups about, I don't know, 10 years ago, whatever it was, maybe longer. I went and I was real concerned about the page loading speed of one of my sites, my biggest client, right? My $1,000 a month client. I was sweating it. And, the caching plugin I was using, was like giving me crazy warnings, oh my God, you don't have the right stuff. And I was all sweating. And I went and the moderator said, hey, hey, you go with Steve over here, whatever, and fill him in, whatever. So the guy sits down with me and I fire up my much older web laptop at the time, pop it open in the site, here's my site. We watch it load up. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, what do you mean? The site doesn't load fast. And he goes, it just loaded like in microseconds. What are you talking about? The whole thing just popped right up. And I said, well, but the measurements. He's like, forget the measurements, man. No one's gonna ever ask you about the measurement. I mean, unless you bring it up, no, your clients aren't gonna find it, right? There, I mean, this is 12 years ago, whatever it was, so it's a little bit different. And now they might find it. But I mean, the truth be told is now the metrics are better, and now it's much more in tune with what I see. When I load my stuff, what I see fast is much more in tune with what the metrics I get using any of the metrics. So I agree with you. I don't know. Will might have a clue with that. I don't know. He just put something in the chat about ways to find conflicts with plugins with performance issues other than isolation testing. I don't know. I mean,
Just put just so I can stop the screen share. There we go. Yeah, Andrew asks, are there ways to find conflicts or plugins with performance issues other than isolating and testing? That's a very specific question. I know. I guess if I were jumping into tool mode, I guess debug would be my first instinct. Yeah, so but this is after you've analyzed the problem and issue and decided, okay, right, I want to go after this one first. Yeah, debug log in general or debug for particular plugins would be the way to look at that. If you're looking for more specific tool set, then you've got the debug plugin, the main debug plugin. And then you got query monitor as well. So debug bar is good. Query monitor is good for seeing what's happening with the DB. But again, those are tool sets that you'd use once you've really kind of delved into the problem. He's not explored debug. Yeah, that's always kind of my first go-to when I am in code mode. I'll switch on the WordPress debug and just see what's going on there. It doesn't always reveal things, and sometimes issues that are spitting out there can be something that's not really aligned with what the main issue is, but you can definitely give that a go. But debug bar is a good one as well that you can have, and I say query monitor as well. Query monitor is probably more important if you've got slowness in the website. It usually tells you what queries are running in the database, and it'll give you a breakdown of which plugin is using that query and how long those queries take. So yeah, if you're looking at slow responses, SQL queries are usually the main culprit, or external queries to APIs as well. Steven says, thanks for the perspective. So when I want to tackle server performance, what are everyone's favorite server performance tools? Oh, server. Yeah, that's a good one. Unless you're running a VPS, I'd pan that off as a support ticket to your hosting company and let them deal with that. If you are running a VPS, then the best tool that you can get is, and it's just slipped out of my head. Let me think about that one. It's on the tip of my tongue, one that I've used ages ago, but I can't quite remember what it was.
Perf matters? Are you talking about perf matters?
No, that's at a plugin level. I'm talking about like a server monitoring level.
Oh,
If you're going to go down the VPS route for server monitoring, that's a slippery slope. But if you're going to be looking at your hosting facility, especially on shared hosts, one of the first things I look at if I'm auditing a site is going to be what PHP version are they running. because just in that scenario itself, you'll get incredible performance gains, let alone security gains as well. But there's a plugin that was released at the Brisbane WordCamp last year, which I've used a number of times, called PHP Vitals.
Okay.
I'll just share it in the chat there. That one actually runs a benchmark from within your WordPress admin area on the power of your server that you're sitting on, and gets you to really see where there could be some bottlenecks. And Will, you mentioned them before, hey, that's kind of something I'd offload to support. Yeah, definitely. If you're on a shared hosting facility, you've got hosting support. This is the kind of data you can give them to say, hey, I can see XYZ is taking 25 seconds to complete. Is there a problem with the server I'm on? Because if there is, can you shift and lift me, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, there's that there.
Thanks, Luke.
For VPS, the tool I was thinking is New Relic.
Oh yeah.
I get a lot of O's and nods on the head. Now, it might be a bit costly. Sometimes the larger hosts will have access to it. But if you're really struggling, if you're wanting to see what your server is doing, I ran VPSs for years before I got bored with it. And we used New Relic with the WordPress add-on or plugin for there. And that breaks down things at like the PHP and SQL and server level. So we're talking about PHP workers and database threads. So if you can't do anything with the WordPress, or if you get an idea that it's lower level, then New Relic is probably the best tool to use for that. But it'll probably cost you an arm and a leg for a while.
There's also Grafana as well, which you can run locally on the server.
Yeah, that'll give you some good stats. Andrew, yep, New Relic is exactly as you spelled it. Yeah.
Sorry, Luke, could you just repeat that other one you mentioned?
Grafana, Grafana, I think. Grafana.
Yes. There's no PH,
Yeah.
it's an F because it's modern.
Yeah.
It's modern and cool.
Yeah, so they've got if I remember, they've got a cloud version they now do. You're looking actually the direct install, so the open source, or at least it used to be an open source version, I can't remember now. But yeah, it's very similar to New Relic, but New Relic is next level. It's enterprise level. Grafana's probably a really good starting point. If you need the full data and analytics of New Relic, then you've definitely got a very, very busy WordPress website.
Yeah, we ran the New Relic with the WordPress admin because maybe somebody was helping to alpha and beta test it, so we got a good deal. Yeah, but yeah, it's very, very costly, and it's enterprise level. That would be the next step up if you really want to optimize it. But for me, I was balancing running VPS. You got your performance, you got your security, you got a whole stack there to look after on top of your WordPress business and WordPress website. So yeah, I offloaded from VPS a long time ago, and just go with hosts support ticket. Not working, figure it out. Not my problem.
Yeah, I like the idea of just paying for that component and saying, I'm paying for this, I expect that. Is it inappropriate to ask what sort of host people recommend or use?
No, I don't think it's inappropriate at all. I was
sponsored by someone.
Yeah, no, I'll go first. I always think of web hosts as like pizzas with toppings. So you'll get the base pizza is, a base and tomato sauce and maybe cheese, and everyone offers that to varying degrees. And then it's all really just all the toppings that people add on. And then there's the issue of pineapples. And pineapples I see as the WordPress managed companies. Some people have good experience, some people have a bad experience. So it's very much how you experience the thing. And a lot of people will say they dislike a particular web host because they came up with a particular issue, or because they said something on socials and it doesn't have anything to do with how the website runs. So it's a very controversial area to be recommending, but I'll give it a go. My kind of go-tos are, I run my sites on Wordify. So they are an Aussie business. So I like to give them support. I will recommend Kinetics to higher mid to enterprise clients. Again, because it's Aussie for them. Then for people who may be struggling budget-wise, I will say to them, go with SiteGround with a data center in Sydney. SiteGround is good for the cost, but then you've got the technical aspects, so they are offline during most of Australian business hours because their tech support is in the US. But you can't grumble with clients that don't have the budget and can't spend $300-400 a month on things like that. So those are kind of my go-to ones. I kind of flip between them depending on the situation, but I always give my client a choice of what they want to do. And I have some clients on different systems and different web hosts, and I support them until a point where they get annoyed with it, and then we can maybe have a conversation. But yeah, I'll open up to everyone else who, if they want to have a go.
I agree with you. Bat them all, man, from HostGator to Liquid Web to you name it, to now I'm just on GridPane, and I have a client on Nexus.
We don't use the hosting companies. We've got our own servers, a little bit like what you used to do, Will. We've got 22 VPSs running for all our clients. But with those that I've spoken to in the industry, there's been good feedback on Rocket.net. I haven't personally used them, but people that I respect use them for their agencies and their clients and have said they've been excellent, not just from a performance perspective, which makes sense for this talk, but also from a support perspective. And they seem to listen to feedback and improve based upon that. SiteGround, I'd say, again, you're right, actual technical support is not in our time zone. General triage, I'll buy time for SiteGround until they wake up in the US which is never good. Yep. Otherwise, I've heard really good things about WPSyd. They're an Aussie company.
Yep.
I know the CEO of that company as well. That is, as you described, Will, plenty of pineapple and other toppings on there too. It's an all-in-one solution. So full WordPress management, plugin updates, security, it's your main WP, it's your umbrella WP, and hosting have come together and had some mutant child. But again, I've heard they've been really good in terms of their support. A couple of agency owners I've spoken to said that their onboarding was the best they've ever experienced. And that was moving 20, 100, 300 sites onto the platform without any, zero downtime, et cetera, et cetera. Otherwise, your big heavy hitters like Kinster and WP Engine, they've been good. Support is great when you get through to them. They seem to have more technical people on support all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, Steve, I just saw you said GridPane. We actually use that technology on top of our servers. So I know that Patrick, the CEO of GridPane, and he's pretty switched on WordPress guy over in the States.
Yep, but they don't allow the GridPane like we have. You got to do the Peak Freak now, but you can still do the Peak Freak and they offer it. So he still has it, just not the GridPane like we have.
Yeah, exactly. Their model has shifted, and they've moved away from what WPSyd, Rocket.net are doing, and they've moved up, let's say. But yeah, my experience with SiteGround has been more hate-hate relationship, not a love-hate relationship. They have got better. It was only recently, as you pointed out, Will, that they've actually brought in an Australian location. A number of clients a few years ago when we did an audit, it was like, you do realize none of your data is in Australia. And they're like, yeah, we're using SiteGround, we're paying in Australian dollars. And it's like, no, you're over in Singapore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
No, that's great. And WP Stack, I've not used them, but yeah, I know Emmanuel as well, and they are very supportive of the overall community, the WordPress community. So it would definitely be a consideration now for me.
Yeah.
For that.
They got some cool things coming. The whispers I get from Manuel as well. So
somebody's asking, does broken links affect the site loading speed? Any difference between writing the CSS in theme, providing additional CSS area, or placing the CSS files in child theme? Okay, a couple of questions there. Broken links don't affect speed site. They will affect SEO, but not your load speed. Difference between writing CSS in theme, additional CSS, or putting them in files? Nope, not much at all. You'll get no difference really. It's still being loaded as a file from the server. So unless your CSS is off the server somewhere, that's what I was talking about, external calls. Like for example, maybe not CSS, but fonts, for example, can be loaded from CDNs. It's still an external call. So things like those can slow down your site. There was a lot of people using Google fonts many years ago through the CDN, and that really affected a lot of people's pages, especially when their services slow down. So the rule of thumb is to load fonts locally now, rather than you just basically try and keep external calls as minimal as possible. But to your actual question, no, those things don't affect speed at all. But great question. Steve, you're talking about uptime monitoring. Yep, uptime robot. I use that as well. And status cake. I use both of them together.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, I think that's all the questions. I think we've had a good discussion here. Hopefully you found that a little bit useful. A different
Great,
take
man.
on performance. And yeah, thanks very much for tuning in. Thanks for your questions as well. It's been great to have an interaction discussion with everyone here. And next month, I'm doing AI in WordPress. So I think over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be digging into this WordPress 7.0 when it comes out. I won't be migrating it to clients. I'll wait for 7.0.1 or 0.2, but I'll definitely be playing around with it on my local system. So
Are you going to try to make the Angie meeting this morning? I hear like in 6 hours or something, Elementor's doing an Angie meeting. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that come through. Yeah.
No, you're not going to. Or you
No,
too late
it's like it's too late here. So it's about 2 a.m. or something, I think, here.
Oh, it's supper time up there now, right?
Oh, okay. Right.
No,
well,
supper time for you, right? Supper time right now, right? Yeah.
It's autumn now.
Yeah, but it's like 1800, right?
Yes.
Yeah. 1814, right? Okay.
Yeah, maybe if I'm still up, I might tune in. But yeah, for those who don't know, Angie's the Elementor plugin that allows you to write Elementor plugins and add-ons, basically.
It's actually platform agnostic from what they showed us last year, which would be cool,
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it was all supposed to be done, by January. Still, whatever. So.
Yeah, well, the version 4 has moved out of beta, but I'm questioning. Yes, I'm not going to say anything more on that. So.
Me neither, bro.
Okay, everyone, have a good night. I'll see you next week, hopefully, next month.
Thanks, man.
Bye, everyone.
Great
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thanks all.
You guys.